What are some common GTM mistakes early stage companies make? How do you determine where you can grow the most? What exactly is a fractional GTM leader and why are these positions growing? They are. Sangram Vajre answers these questions and more. Sangram, the CEO of advisory and education firm GTM Partners, co-founder and former CMO of Terminus, the ABM company, and author of Move, the four-question go-to-market framework. He's next on High Intent, where we explore unfiltered lessons from the front lines of modern marketing. I'm your host, Justin Rubner. Let's do this. Well, Sangram, welcome to High Intent. Very happy to have you on here talking about go-to-market and fractional CMO work.
Yeah, but excited. Go-to-market has been buzzing. It's the new shiny toy in the marketplace. So there's a lot of energy around it. And I feel like I get to be at the tip of the spear with this thing.
Great. Well, let's get into it. You are a co-founder and the former CMO of Terminus, the popular ABM platform. What was the impetus for you guys for starting the company? And why don't you walk us through a couple of GTM successes and failures there?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a quick story. I ran marketing at Pardot, which is also an Atlanta company. It was about 10 million, and we got through the acquisition of ExactTarget and Salesforce, which then was a $2.7 billion acquisition. So it was a big day for Atlanta and for me and for a lot of people in that space. And I remember being at Salesforce where after a couple of quarters, the sales leader on the other side of the team came to me and said, "Hey, Sangram, looks like you guys crushed every single lead goal there is." And I'm like, yeah, we were like celebrating. We got so many leads for our counterparts on the sales team at Salesforce, right? And so it was a very big thing for us and the team. And then he said, but you know what, Sangram, we just need 500 more leads. And I'm like, we just gave you the most leads in the history of the company. Like, why do you need more leads? And he's like, he gave a bunch of reasons and all that. And I was like, why don't we focus on pipeline? Why don't we focus on converting more? Why don't we do more enablement programs? And I just come here with all these ideas. And he just stopped me, Justin. And he said, Sangram, don't take it the wrong way. I just need you to do your job. Just give me leads. And that was the moment where I realized, man, I'm no better than a coin-operated lead machine. Like, that is it. So that was the impetus for me to say, there got to be a better way for my profession as a marketer to not just focus on leads, but to focus on more than what we do for the business. And that's what led us to start Terminus. It was already there. The two co-founders had started it. It was an advertising company. And when I saw that, I'm like, man, what if we turn that into a product where you can target to only the accounts out there in the marketplace? Because in B2B, you're not trying to sell a Nike shoe. You really should know what are the top 50 or 100 accounts you want to go after. What if you're able to target those and give metrics around if they saw the ad or not and see if they move through the sales funnel? And that was just a dream. They kind of went back and they said, yeah, I can do it. And they said, well, if you're so passionate about it, why don't you come and join us as a co-founder? And that was my first journey or step into being a co-founder. So I wish I would say, man, I was always a entrepreneur and I did everything. And, from the very beginning, that not true. It was one of those decisions that I didn't see it coming. I thought I'll be an advisor or something to these guys. And I ended up moving from Salesforce to building Terminus with them. And thank God we did that because obviously we had a phenomenal exit after that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about ABM, what do you think is the drive to accepting that ABM is a good way to market, account-based marketing versus more of a scatter shot? What do you think is driving that? And is it only B2B in your mind?
It really is for anything that's worth going after that has tremendous amount of value. So, for example, in B2B, of course, you're only selling to a set of accounts, companies. You're not selling to individuals. There's a buying committee is much bigger and all that. So all those people, how do we engage all of them? More longer sales cycles. That's what make ABM very important because then you have to keep them warm, not just to nurture emails, but through advertising and whatever else you could do, events, all those things. They're all come under the banner of ABM, like account-based advertising, account-based analytics, account-based targeting, account-based events, dinners, webinars, roundtables, any activities that you might do, community that is focused on it. So anything that's worth a good amount of money, and that's where it becomes more. So the more value it has, the more ABM it needs to be. So for example, if you're selling somebody a $10 per month community access, well, ABM may not be worth your time because it's the cost of acquisition is way too high for the value you're going to get. But if it is $10,000, now you're talking, maybe you should do account-based advertising. If it is $100,000, oh, now it's even more important. Maybe you should do account-based, not just advertising, but maybe events in that region or industry-focused thing, or maybe a research paper focused on that particular vertical or segment, so to help them move forward. If it's $1 million, now it's even more important to do it. And
Absolutely.
then yeah, it's not really B2B or B2C, although B2B is the classic case for it. It's the value of your deal is really what determines if you should go account based or not.
And you said it had a good exit. Talk for a second about the exit.
Yeah, like Terminus, we grew from $1 million in the first year to 5 in the second, and then 15 in the third, and we had $100 million plus exit by the time I left, and then it got reacquired by another company, so we had like a 2 exit in a way. So it was great, and I ended up writing 2 books on ABM, and as I was exiting out of it, I was trying to look around the corners, like what is the next big thing that's happening in the marketplace. In my experience has been the reason Terminus got started, or at least I got involved as much as I did, was because I wanted to solve the marketing and sales divide. And that was my attempt.
Did you solve it?
No, that's why I still call it my
Okay.
attempt. My attempt to do that was through introducing account-based marketing to the world. And I think it did good. It did its part, and it still is an ongoing thing. I think it's still a concept for many people to work through. And we sell more ABA books today than we did 8 years ago. So if that tells you anything, that this is still a problem that continues to be in the marketplace. But then as I looked and grew Terminus from 1,000,005, 15, 50 and all, I saw this other issue, which was the ICP issue. A lot of businesses don't really talk about, but you really need to know what's the real ICP that is profitable for your business. And because we were building a new category, we got a lot of customers early on, but not all of them stayed. As a result of that, in the early days, we had a tremendous churn issue. And we thought that, man, that's bad. Like, how do you sustain when you have a big, not just a leaky bucket, it's a bucket with a hole, right? Like it's a big issue.
Are you talking one ICP or multiple?
Multiple ICPs. But in the beginning, you really have to narrow down on that ICP.
Why don't B2B companies get this right? Why do we get this wrong so often? It seems like the most important question.
Yeah, it is. It is. And in the go-to-market operating system that we now talk about, it's literally the first question. Where do you want to grow the most? And the way you answer that question is figuring out the ICP. We even phrased it out saying, don't think about TAM, which is total addressable market. Think about TRM, which is total relevant market, which
Sure.
is the 5% of the people who are actually ready to buy, as opposed to the 95% who are just getting research. The reason I think, Justin, this is hard is because ICP for the longest time has been a marketing job. The CEO has to own go-to-market. There is no other way to look at it, especially in B2B. If the CEO does not own go-to-market, and owning means not necessarily executing on it, owning means that if you're going to talk about ICP, which is the most profitable ICP or the segment of our business, the CEO has to be in the room helping define that. The CRO, the sales leader, the CS leader, the ops person, the finance, they all have to be in the room. That's why go-to-market fails. Yeah. And so a lot of times what happens, and I'll tell you a quick story on this, is a friend of mine recently, I'll keep it vague, but she posted on LinkedIn that she generated like the record amount of pipeline for their business, like $25 million or something like that in 6 months. And she posted that on LinkedIn, high-fiving, all that stuff. And then 2 weeks later, she was fired. And so I know the person, so I picked up the phone and called her. I'm like, hey, what happened? Like, you posted, you had like a credible pipeline. Like, how would you get let go? Like, what happened? She said, well, we didn't have the ICP right. I'm like, wait, you are the CMO of that company. You were the CMO. How did you not get the ICP? What happened? And Justin, what she shared was like, hey, look, what happened was they had a strategy session a quarter before. They went out, all of them, excited about it, all those offsites which everybody feels like they're going to go up to the moon and come back in a matter of minutes. So they had that kind of session and they decided this is the ICP they're going to focus on. And then as soon as they were done, she went running after that ICP. And a quarter later, it was a lagging indicator of churn that they did not pay attention to. And so what they found out was like, oh my God, they were focused on SMB ICP, which was easy to sell, but hard to retain and impossible to expand.
And of course, they fired the marketing leader.
Yep. And so what they do is that, oh, we just wasted $100,000 in 6 months of time. Marketer, you are fired. And that story is so common. And I would love to say, and to her, I said, hey, I feel for you. But I also put that on her. I'm like, hey, you are a business leader. It is your job to understand and ask the secondary questions around like, hey, is this a profitable thing? Is this the right ICP? What if they do close? But then you need to know business metrics.
I've been there before
Yeah.
with other business executives. Absolutely sure what a new segment of the market is going to yield. There's no question. And as a marketing leader, you have to put on your reporter's hat and you have to be skeptical
Yeah.
of that because, as your friend found out, the CRO isn't going to get fired. The CEO isn't going to get fired. The head of sales is going to be the marketer. So I think smart CMOs know this. And what would we rather do? I don't want to sell.
Yeah.
I'll be the scapegoat. You just have to be smarter about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is
And not that your friend wasn't smart. It's an easy trap to fall into.
it's a very easy trap because I think especially CMOs are typically very strategic. They are always more or 9 out of 10 times, they are very much of a team player. They're trying to see everybody win. They want to grow the business. They recognize that the role of a marketer is to grow the business. That's why they hire marketing. Marketing is not the first thing. Typically, it's the second or third thing when they have either a product market fit or the semblance of more product market fit or more. So marketing role is very strategic. It is a growth lever for most businesses. So most marketers recognize that, but very few marketers transition into what I call the business of marketing. They understand marketing their business, all the different things that they could do to market the business really well, SEO, now AEO, pay-per-click, events, graphic design, messaging, positioning, all really good. They can do it for anybody else. But then if they don't understand the business of marketing, which would require you to understand GRR, NRR, and what does that look like, and what is your expansion strategy, and what product and portfolio you need to. If you don't know those parts, or are not aware of it, or not getting yourself entrenched in it over a period of time, that's what happens with them, is that they are let go because they focus on the wrong thing without recognizing and knowing that it's the wrong thing.
Yep. I've heard this a lot during this podcast, and I believe it. So you talk a lot about GTM playbooks. Tell me what you believe why the old GTM playbooks are not working and why.
Yeah, I think some of the old playbooks are like MQLs, right? And I probably am the one who created that, right? With the whole Pardot and ABM and all that jazz. And what has happened is, for the longest time, we're still trying to solve a simple problem. And the problem is this: you want to attract the right audience to buy your product at the highest profitable margin possible. That is as simple as it gets. And what we have done is, over a period of time, we have said, all right, for that, we need this tool, that tool, and all these 20 other tools to solve that audience problem and acquisition problem. And in the process of doing all of it, we became really infatuated, or maybe fell in love with the products and the tech and the process of it. And we absolutely forgot our way to the heart of your customer. So all these metrics that have been created, like MQLs and MQA and SQA and this and that, we got so fixated on that we actually let go of the most important part of what makes a business grow, which I believe wholeheartedly is that the thing that grows the business more than anything else is brand. And true brand drives demand. And if brand is not the one that you have invested in and you end up over the top investing in demand, then you're going to keep trying to spend and spend and spend and overspend on that to create more demand, but you didn't have the brand to begin with. So you end up crunching those numbers, figuring it out, trying to squeeze everything you possibly can through all these metrics that were artificially created to move things or customers through the funnel. Instead, if you had a brand that actually drove great demand, you will actually have more profitable customers, better cost of acquisition, and you will drive greater value for your business overall.
Well, Sangram, you're preaching to the choir, but how do we get a CFO to understand this?
Now it's one of the hardest things to do, right? Because CFO is very much into this. But you have I've also learned now that I'm the CEO. I'm being on the other side of this equation of being a CMO to exiting out of company. We acquired 5 companies when I was at Terminus, so I learned a lot about acquisitions. And now building Terminus, we're building GTM Partners. We're like roughly 10 million in revenue now. I've been on this side of it, and I'm looking at this and thinking about this, Justin. Like, I think what a CEO and a CFO needs to understand more than anything else is that any and everything you are doing is actually drive the business forward. A lot of times people misrepresent brand, especially marketers. Every CEO wants a great brand. Like, if somebody were asked, like, hey, do you want to be an Apple brand or a Microsoft brand? Especially back in the day, everybody will say Apple. If you want to be a Salesforce CRM or you want to be a Zoho, if you're like, yeah, Salesforce, like, so everybody understands inherently the value of brand. But the CEO of every one of the companies I just mentioned is actually the chief marketing officer too. The CEO believes in brand. They live the brand. So you cannot force brand upstream. I've learned that the hard way. It only flows downstream. So the CEO has to live it out. Steve Jobs lived. You would never know who the CMO of that brand is, right? Or Salesforce, you would never know who the CMO of Salesforce is. You would never know who the CMO of Anthropic is. Why? Because the CEO oozes the idea of a brand. They're on this eternal path of like, I'm going to go and drive this forward and will live it out for the rest of my life. So if you're trying to push it up and start to sell the idea of a brand, you know what happens? Brand becomes a campaign. And anytime anything becomes a campaign, it has a start and an end date, and it dies.
Yeah.
And if you want brand to live it out, like, we're in Atlanta, you and I, and so Chick-fil-A, I was having this conversation with the VP of marketing at Chick-fil-A. I'm like, hey, how many times have you all had a conversation of replacing the cow to something else? And they said, man, you can't believe it. Like, almost every month, some new hire says, what if we tried something different? What if we had not a cow with spots, but do something else, right? Maybe we should have no more pigs. Like, what if people come up with all these things and they keep doing market research every single time, Justin, and they keep looking at it and saying that, no, the market loves it. They get it. They don't need to be told anything else. Don't change it. The hardest thing is to stick to a brand.
Chick-fil-A should have a trap door on the floor anytime someone mentions that.
It's like it's in human nature. We want something new. We want something shiny. We want something try. We want to take credit for something. But in reality, they're only.
Tell that to Tropicana and their redesign that failed.
Yeah, absolutely. All of it. So my lesson of it is that you cannot take brand upstream. Brand always goes downstream.
Okay. Good to know. In your 2021 book, Move, the 4-question go-to-market framework, your 4th question is determining where you can grow the most. Let's talk about how a company should answer this once they've penetrated multiple markets or use cases. How do you even go about doing that?
That book, Move, it became a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And Jeffrey Moore, who wrote Crossing the Chasm, said, man, if I were to write this book again, he would have written this book. So I feel very excited about it because people really need to read something like this to understand that business growth happens in stages. And we kind of in the book talk about this idea of problem market fit to product market fit to platform market fit. That's the 3P. And the fourth question that you talk about is absolutely the most important question of any business that you need to be continually asking. And the question is going to be the same, but the answer will change based on the stage of the business you are in. So, for example, where can you grow the most in the early stage? If you're in a problem market fit early on, where you're just trying to find somebody to buy your product, well, guess what? You just need to find somebody to buy a product with. So it really doesn't matter because you're trying to figure it out. So give yourself grace, and you're going to have a lot of good, bad, ugly customers in the process. And that's the way it's going to be. And you can have churn and all that stuff. But then at some point, it hits where you're like, oh, shoot, it seems like you're solving this for the construction marketplace or business, out there, or manufacturing of certain size and in a certain location and certain type of persona. And that's when it clicked. Like, you can now, the sales becomes easier, and you'll be able to repeat, and you start getting into the market much easier. You raise your prices, and that's an early indicator of being in a product market fit. So the question is, well, how can I grow? You don't need to do anything more. You need to go deeper into that particular segment, and you need to experiment with different go-to-market motions. Maybe it's inbound or outbound or product-led or community-led, event-led. We have like 6 different types of go-to-market motions you can penetrate into. So that's what that answer to that question is. And it massively changes when you go to platform market fit, where the money is. That's where, if you want to scale a business over 10 million or 50 million in revenue, you cannot go to that extent without being a platform market fit, which means you're able to sell the product to multiple personas, multiple segments, multiple regions, multiple partners. All those things have to be part of that go-to-market motion. So that, honestly, those stages is really how you answer that question. The question is the same, but the answer is dramatically different based on the stage and the scale of the business.
Okay. Let's talk about your GTM course. Why did you start this course, and what would someone like me get out of it?
Yeah, so there are, honestly, we have multiple courses now as part of GTM University, and one of it is for fractionals. So we found out, like, in the first 3 years of building GTM Partners, Brian and I, my co-founder, we built this idea of go-to-market operating system because we started doing consulting work, and we found out we are miserable at it. We are actual failures at it because we just know how to solve problems. So we would go and act as operators, solve a go-to-market problem, and move on. And whereas they're like, no, 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 what's your billable? What's your per hour rate? How long are you going to be here? What's your monthly? And we're like, no, we just give us for the problem that we're trying to solve. If we solve that problem, and it didn't work. It didn't work that way. So we invented this idea of go-to-market operating system, which is the 8 pillars, and that's where the questions like where can you grow the most is answered. And we started to teach that and help companies go through that. And we have over 3,000 companies that have now gone through the GTM OS, where you map your entire go-to-market strategy on one slide, on just one slide.
Okay.
And that is why it became so popular, because every CEO, every executive team is asking all the questions, but they just don't have the right vocabulary, and maybe something is missing, and they talk about this, but they forget talking about
Well, we're also not looking at the entire picture in one view, as
in one view.
that crystallizes things for sure.
And it's simplified. It's very, very simplified. It's applied from, I did this with Yamini Rangan, who's the CEO of HubSpot. I've done this with ZoomInfo CEO Henry Schucks, the entire go-to-market in one slide in about 20 minutes. So what it does is that every time, so imagine this, Justin, every time somebody says, hey, we should go after this segment, right? That happens all the time. Like, hey, we should go after manufacturing because I closed a deal. You go back to the same go-to-market for that exact same. Right, let's just create events, let's just create a slide deck, let's just create a case study, and you're like, wait, what? But the reason is people fight about this thing. But instead of fighting, imagine this. Do you have your go-to-market strategy on a slide right there with all those 8 questions? Said, okay, so we're introducing this new segment. Great. Do we have a point of view for it? It just will ask those 8 questions, right? No, we don't. Okay, do we have a customer that? No, we don't. Oh, do we have a clear ROI? No, we just started. Okay, do we know if do we have a point of view that connects the dots for this? No, we don't. Oh, do we have customer success that can support that industry? Yeah, I think we have one person. Okay, so 1 out of 8 is your score on that particular segment. So how about you go sell 2 more and then come to me and talk about this particular industry? We would have saved at Terminus over $2 million if we would have just made that process happen, because we would, oh my gosh, Jim, you closed that deal. That's awesome. And everybody's excited. So we're all going and running in this direction. And before you know, a quarter is gone. We have lost a bunch of time and money and energy and resources going after an industry and a vertical that we shouldn't have no business going. We were just fluke that we had that one big deal from that.
Can we circle back to your Terminus example?
Yeah.
What did you do wrong and what did you see in the process?
Well, first we did wrong was that until we were $10 million in revenue, we hired several executives, which we shouldn't have. We had to let them go. We realized that most companies shouldn't hire executives until they're at least around 5 or 10 million in revenue, because you just don't know what you're doing. When we hired an executive, they were like, oh, this is great. I know I've done this before. I've been at it at 20 million, 30 million. And so they want to hire people. They want to have more tech. They want to have process, but you're just not ready for all that stuff.
Yeah.
So we hired too early executives in the process because we were growing that fast. And that was a huge
Well,
mistake.
hold on. So you hired executives too early. Who should you have before 5 million?
Yeah, before 5 million, you need doers. You need people who can execute on your strategy. You are the founders or the early people or the strategy or the idea or testing. You don't really know. You need people who can just pivot very, very quickly without needing a whole bunch of support. Like, say, oh, we're going to do another event. Okay, let's go do that thing. And you have to just test it. At some point, that all needs to stop, which is the weird thing that happens at 10, 20 million. You just can't go do those things again. But up to 10 million, you just don't know what works. You just don't know which customer segment you're going to be profitable. You probably haven't even crossed a couple of years of revenue to see which
But
customers.
someone's got to be directing this.
Up to 10 million, Justin, I think the founders typically are pretty well set to do that. When they have more people in it, they just end up fighting, and what we ended up doing, and we saw it now that we have done like this so many times with so many companies, we say, man, it just puts people in a bad spot. On the flip side, at 10, right about 10 million or so, when you have product market fit and you see it, you absolutely need an executive, because without that, you can't scale. You cannot get to 20 million. You cannot get to 30 million. So there is that tipping point that happens, but you have to be very careful that you don't go and hire too early or too late at the same
Okay.
time.
All right. That's a really cool example. So the reason you had to get rid of them was because they were making decisions based on previous playbooks that weren't relevant
Yeah. Yeah. They were trying to do things at scale.
at
And
scale when you weren't
and
at scale yet.
we were not at scale, and it's
Right.
hard to say that, and it's hard as a founder to kind of say that, well, don't you want to scale? Of course I want to scale. But we shouldn't scale, and we shouldn't create a process around something that hasn't worked at least 10 times in the same way. Like, we were still doing founder-led sales, so having a sales process made no sense for us, because we were still trying to figure out what is the price, what is the packaging, what is the positioning. I remember, for example, I'll give you a classic example. The first sales call, I had me and Eric, my other co-founder, on the call. And we had a Polycom. This is 2015, right? There's no screen, nothing, like the big octopus Polycom on the table. So we're like an audio call. And I'm on this audio call, and we're talking to this. I'll never forget her name. Her name is Gretchen. And she said, hey, we somehow got that call set up from our intern. And so I was on the call, super excited about this idea of targeted advertising that can change the world of B2B and this and that. And I was like, just talking, right? And she at some point said, oh, it's saying, I get it. I get it. How much is it for? We have never thought about pricing, because we were so excited of building this thing. We never thought about pricing. So I said, 1 second, Gretchen. I put her on mute, and I asked Eric, my co-founder, saying, dude, what should we sell for? And he's like, dude, you're the marketer. You need to come up with that. So I'm like, $250 a month? He said, sounds great. Unmute it and say, Gretchen, how's $250 a month? And she's like, oh, great. Send me the paperwork. I'm like, great. And we shut the phone down, and we're like, man, we sold the first. It was $250. It was nothing, but we did not know how to price. We did not know. That was a 9 a.m. call. Now at 10 a.m. I had another call. Guess what? We sold it at $500.
I was just going to say that you doubled it. Yeah.
Doubled it. By noon, we were selling it for $1,000, right at the three. And then we found that as the floor. Okay, we can't really go. We need more things to show before we go over 1,000. But at the early stage of your business, that's the level of movement and change you are doing. If you hire an executive, they're going to say, what's my script? What's my process?
They're going to be very uncomfortable
Yeah.
shooting from the hip like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why it's important. It's imperative to make sure that you have people at the right level where they know what it is. So if I have doers who don't know nothing better than you don't need more ideas at 10 million. What you need is more execution. And then after 10 million, you need more ideas to scale your business.
Okay. We don't have too much more time, so I want to get into the fractional stuff. Let's talk about what a fractional leader is exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what it is generally, but let's talk about how long are these assignments? So, what are their responsibility? Let's say a fractional CMO versus a full-time CMO, and how does someone even find an opportunity like this?
Great questions. Always start with a quick story because I think it gives people the depth of why this is so interesting. If you look at online right now, the highest growth in any executive job function ever has been in the world of fractional go-to-market leaders, specifically fractional CMOs or CROs or fractional operational leaders and those kind of. So those roles have been skyrocketed, and it has happened because of two things. One, AI has really made everybody think about business very differently. So it has changed the way the cost structures are, and the economy has moved in that direction. And number two is that there is now people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. They have 2 decades plus of experience of pretty much seeing everything when it comes to business and the world of go-to-market. They're tired of going through the same 2 year or 1 year or 18 months of cycle where they go and prove and do everything, and 18 months later something changes and they get fired. The tenure has been the lowest overall for the longest period of time. And because of these two things happening at the same time, I think it has skyrocketed the need for it. AI, where you can do execution at scale. And finally, if you're a CMO and research, right? So all of a sudden now, fractionals, the people who have 20, 30, 40 years of experience, they are finding themselves like, shoot, I know how to do strategy, and I have AI now to help me do execution. I don't want to write cold call emails when I'm 20 years of experience, but AI can do that for me now based on all those things. I don't want to do the research for it, but now AI can do the research for me. So for the very first time in the history of our go-to-market world, strategist can actually execute. And it doesn't have to feel like you are dumbing down yourself. It's actually helping you scale. And that wasn't possible before. So because of all the market conditions and all those change, that has become the fundamental reason why it has moved. And number two, financially, it has been the best thing that has happened on both sides. A typical $5-10 million company we were just talking about, if they want to hire a CMO, they would probably need to fork up 250 to 300K plus bonus plus equity as a normal average CMO at a $10 million company. Instead of that, if they can get somebody in their industry who has that of experience 1 or 2 days a week for $10,000 or $15,000 a month, that's like 120 to 150,000. So they literally saved 150K. They don't have to worry about trying to train them in their industry, and the math works out for itself. So for a fractional, if I have 2 or 3 clients, I'm going to be making $500,000 if I'm pricing myself right. And that's what happens in our community. And for a CEO, they would never be able to afford a 300-400K person, but now they can by having them work 1 or 2 days. And the reason 1 and 2 days works is because most of the time, you and I both know we are in meetings that we shouldn't be. When you're right? Like when you're full time, you're all the time in meetings that you should not be. Days, weeks passed away wondering, like, what did I do this week again? But when you become fractional, everybody's very strategic with your time.
Yeah, they don't want to waste your time because they're paying you. Yeah.
Right. So as a result of that, it becomes very strategic. Hey, I'm here for 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. We're going to go through strategy and execution, and we're going to execute for the rest of the week. That we'll talk next week on change.
So a fractional CMO is actually executing too.
Yeah, that is the biggest shift. Most fractional CMOs think that they can get away with pure play strategy and pure play design, pure play just helping advisory work. That might happen in some cases, but in most cases, the expectation from a CEO is that they're hiring a business leader at a fraction of the cost that can help them with both strategy and, if needed, execution on it. And it's actually possible now because AI can do all that for you.
Okay. How long are these assignments?
Justin, one of the best thing, I was just talking to one of our fractional leaders in our community. He just signed, like, this is this morning while we were recording this. He called me up and he said, "Hey, Sangram, here is in we, because we see so many patents. We have over 150 people now as certified partners, so we see every type of legal contract and pricing, packaging for all of it." He said, "I got this for next 6 months, the second half of this year. It's 20K a month." And he said, "I wanted to do 25K, but I'm going to get 20K. They wanted to negotiate. So what should I ask?" And I shared with him, like, "Well, what have you as the terms?" He said, "Well, it's for 6 months and it's a 2 weeks out. Like they have to give me a 2 week notice if they want to let go." I'm like, "Dude, you're not in W2 anymore. Stop thinking small. Ask for a 90-day out, especially if you have a 6 months contract with them. And trust me, they will probably negotiate and they will probably align on 60 days. He reached out to them. He called me back and said, "Yep, they agreed on 60 days." So
In
now,
other words, they have to give you 60 days warning if they
yeah,
want to get rid of you.
yeah, 60-day notice. So think about that. As a fractional, you have a much longer notice period than a W2 person because they have a 6 month window with you and he's going to be making more money than he would have had as if he was full time in that 6 months.
And they're not paying benefits and stuff.
They're
So
not paying
it's
benefits.
mutually beneficial.
Very, very beneficial. So making 500,000 as a fractional couldn't be more true today. It's absolutely possible because the CEOs are still finding that to be cheaper than actually having somebody full time. And it's obviously better for individuals because they're like, why would I work again full time and be in meaningless, mindless meetings as opposed to having 3, 4 clients and having a 60-day out?
How would a company and a job seeker or a fractional work seeker
Yeah.
find these opportunities?
So today we were trying to be that bridge today. So we have something called as go to marketplace.
GTM Partners.
Yeah, GTM Partners. We have something. If you go to GTM Partners or run on gtmos.com, you will see a marketplace where we list all of our fractionals. They have to go through a vetting process, certification process, and then we have partnership with private equity firms, PE firms, recruiting firms. They literally come over there, search for specific. So, for example, somebody's looking for a marketing fractional in a legal tech industry that has 10 plus years of experience to scale over at over 10 million or more. That's the kind of search somebody will put in, and then they would pop open the list of people who actually have that. So it will match that criteria. So we have made it open source. We want every single fractionals to have 1 to 3 clients as soon as they join our community and the process. And most people are making anywhere between 300K to 500K with 2 to 3 clients. And that is our goal. We want fractionals to, in our words, if you will, be financially free from this 2 week notice, right? Like you should make $500,000 if you have 20, 30 years of experience in go to market.
Yeah, that's awesome. Last question. What do companies get wrong about fractional work?
Oh, even no matter what happens, when a CEO hires a fractional, they think they have them full time. They start pinging you over the weekend. They start pinging you over all like it's just they skip the part of all the negotiation and they start treating you like it. And so the CEO's typically has to be nudged back into the process. Hey, I'm not here full time. I'm not here only you are not my only client. And of course, if it's an emergency and all that stuff, I'm all in on it. But do not expect me to be fully focused on you for the rest of the week when we have Monday and Tuesday. So it takes about a month or two to bring that rhythm in the process of like, this is when we talk. And if you have more ideas we need to talk about, make a list and let's talk Monday. It's very hard in this world where you can just slack. Hey, here's an idea. Here's what I want you to do.
And it's not like you're doing anything evil. It's not human nature, right? I'm in the moment. I have a problem. I'm going to ask my GTM CMO, my fractional CMO, and
Yeah.
they may not be thinking that they're off that day or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is the part is the hardest part on both sides because you yourself as a fractional also want to help out because you are excited. You're in the business. You want to deliver value, but you have to find a way to balance that out. And it's one of the hardest thing to do.
Yeah. Well, Sangram, I really appreciate you being on. I've learned a decent amount of stuff today. And where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me on LinkedIn. I write on LinkedIn all the time. They can go to runongtmos.com. That's where we list out all the marketplace and all of our research.
Okay. Cheers. Great
All right. Thank you, Justin.